If you've watched any of our videos, you know that my husband Jarrett and I are big fans of Vancouver, Washington, but we also don't shy away from the tough topics. And having relocated 7 years ago from Southern California, we now know a lot about what it's like to live in Vancouver. And today we're going to talk about some of the things that people don't like about living in Vancouver, Washington. So if that's something you're interested in, stay tuned. Welcome back to Living in the Pacific Northwest with Hal Byrd. I'm Hal Byrd, and I am a licensed realtor in Oregon and Washington. I'm also a certified luxury and relocation specialist with a team called the Bird's Eye Group that is absolutely amazing at helping people find home, whether you're looking to move to or within the Portland Metro and Southwest Washington areas. We can help you on both sides of the river if you are relocating from out of the area or if you're just selling your home and moving within. We obviously on this channel talk a lot about relocation because so many people watch us on YouTube that are from out of the area, and we want to be able to help those people because we were in your shoes 7 years ago and we didn't know that much about Vancouver. And my husband and I, having spent so many years in Vancouver, have a very overall positive outlook on Vancouver in terms of where it's at now and where it's going. But there are some downsides to it that we've seen in our 7 years and that a lot of people talk about that we think that are worth at least touching on, at least discussing on the channel. So if you're new here, make sure to subscribe, like this video, leave a comment, let me know where you're currently living, when you might want to be moving to the area, or if you live here, do you agree with our assessment, or let us know what we missed. We love talking to you guys in the comments, and we get so many thoughtful comments. It just really helps us build a community. And if you've also been watching our videos for a while, you know that we have a saying, you don't just get a home, you get a community. And that sometimes starts here on YouTube, but it also extends to all of our in-person client events that we do to make sure that we are continuing to love on our community. So without further ado, let's jump right in to the first downside that we want to talk about with Vancouver, Washington, and that is rising crime. So when you're starting to look at Vancouver, Washington, and if you're anything like the dozens of clients that we help relocate every year, you are probably watching our channel, you're watching other channels here on YouTube, you might be reading Reddit, looking at Facebook, trying to gather all the information you can to make an informed decision. I think that is the best course of action. And so you might see stuff, especially in the online forums and from locals, talking about crime and how much worse it's gotten. And I can say that anecdotally, my husband and I have noticed an increase in crime, partially because of some of the laws that Washington State has enacted that have, I think, allowed some crimes to rise. When we first moved here, so when we were looking and we were in your shoes about should we move to Vancouver, one of the things that I noticed, and this is just my personal assessment of crime coming from someone who grew up in a suburban area, lived in an urban area in Los Angeles, which obviously has crime of all sorts, and then with looking at moving up here. So one of the things that stood out to me is that violent crime tended to be lower than the national average in Vancouver, while property crime was higher. And that has been consistently true in all the years that I've looked at crime stats. And for me, the violent crime and having a lower rate of violent crime was more important to me because I think there's a lot that you can mitigate when it comes to property crime. Like you can have cameras, you can, have street smarts, be a little bit more aware and alert, not leave things out, lock your doors. A lot of people in Clark County to this day do not lock their cars or their homes. So, and going back longer than we've lived here, 20, 30 plus years, people who were born and raised here, it was an even safer place. So I think you hear a lot of frustration with the locals because it has gotten less safe. And so if you grew up somewhere where you weren't worried about crime at all, you didn't lock your front door, you didn't lock your car, it can feel like a inconvenience to now do those things. So there's that contingent. And then I would say, over in the early 2020s, we definitely had some higher crime. Now, our newspaper just put out an article about how the overall crime rate in Clark County in 2024 went down. So you'll see people talk about an increase in crime. And some of that can also be just a feeling of being less safe. But statistically, we have seen overall crime go down. Now, what's interesting is that we did see some violent crime increase in 2025, and I'll share all of that on the screen so you guys can see. Like I said, we're not afraid to dive into hard topics. So to give you context with these numbers, in 2024, the number of murders in Vancouver was 11. Compared to 2023, there were 7 murders in the city of Vancouver. In 2024, unincorporated Clark County, so some of that is parts of Vancouver, some of that is unincorporated areas of Ridgefield, Battleground. So the whole of unincorporated Clark County saw 5 murders. And to give you some context, at least going back to the city of Vancouver population is about 200,000 people, plus or minus, and there were 11 murders in 2024. So while that's an increase from 7, in the grand scheme of things, it's, I don't personally feel unsafe in the city of Vancouver, in any part of the city of Vancouver. There are parts that are more aesthetically pleasing than others, some areas that have HOAs that are well maintained, some that don't have HOAs where people don't maintain their property, and then there's some places that don't have HOAs where neighborhoods are maintained beautifully. So you really want to work with someone when you're looking to relocate and you're looking to purchase a home that can really tell you what neighborhoods and community are going to be a good fit based on what you're looking for, because there's not a one-size-fits-all solution for housing. The second thing I want to talk about when it comes to a downside of living in Vancouver is the homelessness crisis, or houselessness, however you feel comfortable saying it. I might use those interchangeably. There is a unhoused population. And now if we're going back to looking at those different sources online, you'll see a lot of locals say, well, all of those people are coming in from Portland, like Portland's bringing its problems here. And I don't think that's true. I have a friend who works a lot with the unhoused population here in Clark County. And what a lot of people don't realize who are upset about the unhoused is that there are people who are native here. They grew up in Vancouver and they can't afford it anymore. There are people who are homeless by choice in Vancouver, and they're not from Portland. They are Washingtonians. They've grown up here. So while there might be some spillover in homelessness from Portland, that does not tell 100% of the story. Now, I want to talk about this from an experiential or anecdotal perspective, because number one, it's very difficult to get accurate data on homelessness unless you have organizations, and there are organizations in Vancouver, but unless they're out counting people, it's very difficult. What I can say that I've seen as a resident is I have seen an increase in the 7 years that we've been here, which isn't a surprise with rising housing costs, with just the state of the economy in America. But I've seen an increase in what I think is now called urban camping, and you're gonna have to forgive me, I'm not always up to date on exactly what's politically correct, but urban camping, or tents, cities, or however you want to describe it, people camping essentially on public land. So there was a court case, Grants Pass versus Johnson, that upheld that bans on public camping okay. And the city of Vancouver, when that ruling initially came out, said that they weren't going to do anything at the moment, and that was maybe a year and a half ago, if I'm remembering correctly. But in the last year, I would say we've seen them enforce and clean up the camp that was along Mill Plain Boulevard in downtown Vancouver, right at the intersection of Franklin and Mill Plain, which is kind of near the Howe community. And then we also more recently in the summer of 2025 have seen the city clean up the encampments that were happening along the Burnt Bridge Creek Trail. And so from an anecdotal perspective, I personally think that we need to have real solutions. Obviously, it's a very complicated topic, and Vancouver is doing things like the Stay Safe communities to address that, and we've seen success rates with that, where someone goes from being unhoused to going into one of the Stay Safe communities and graduating out to their own apartment, finding employment. So there is a path, and Vancouver, the city is opening more and more of those Stay Safe communities. It's been so successful actually that the big city, Portland, has sort of copied this model. And, you know, talking about Burn Bridge Creek, like we hadn't been on Burn Bridge Creek in years, and I heard that it had gotten a little bit unsafe. There was an article about how there were casings, like bullets found along the trail. And I think after that, the city decided to clean it up. So all of those encampments are gone. And just by happenstance, my husband and I went on a group ride through Burn Bridge Creek Trail, and there was no evidence of any sort of camping going on. So it is a rising problem across this country, and we need real solutions for people, to treat people with dignity, to give them access to resources. Again, this is just my opinion. So while it has gotten worse, and you will see people talk about it online, I think the city is doing something with these stay safe communities. There's talk about opening more shelter space for the unhoused. And so while it's not a perfect model that I think is going to be, you know, taken across the country to solve homelessness, I think that the city is trying to do something about it. So that is a bit of a downside to deal with, but it's also part of life. And if you want to live in a growing urban area, Vancouver is in the process. I have also a friend who works in the nonprofit world who said that by technicality, Vancouver is actually no longer suburban, but has moved into an urban classification. And I think you are seeing that. You are seeing more of the urbanization of the city of Vancouver with the waterfront, with some of the developments that are coming in. There was just announced from the city on their Instagram page, actually, that Vancouver is expected to grow by another 81,000 people in the coming decades. And so some of that's going to be with annexing some of the unincorporated areas that were already planned to be annexed by the city of Vancouver. And I imagine some of that's going to come from population growth. So I do want to touch on it because, you know, you will see some level of urban camping, homelessness. We don't live in a bubble in Vancouver where you can ignore it. There are places you see it less, and places that are more frequented by the unhoused population. But that is something that exists. And if you're online and you're reading about the downsides of Vancouver, that is something that's going to come up. The third thing I want to talk about, and probably the thing that as a resident affects me and my household the most, is traffic congestion and street planning. So as Clark County is growing and the population grows, so does rush hour, gridlock. If you've watched this channel for a long time, you know that about 35-ish, give or take, % of the working population in Clark County commutes into Oregon, which means that the bridges are a bottleneck of traffic when you're going south during morning hours and when you're going north during the evening hours because of rush hour traffic and commutes. That being said, we did mention this in one of our recent videos, but the average commute time for this metro area, so this is including all of the Portland metro area, is about 20, I think it was like between 25 and 27 minutes. So when you look at places like where my husband and I last lived in California, in the Temecula Valley region, and probably, I don't know off the top of my head, but probably the average commute times there were closer to 45 minutes plus. We had friends that would commute into Los Angeles. You're talking about 2+ hours each way. And I find it really telling when you look at people's comments online about this, that people don't say that the worst intersection in the city is where they live. It's not like, oh, my intersection at 18th and 136th is the worst. No, my intersection in Lakeshore is the worst. Like, people aren't arguing about like very specific to certain neighborhood intersections. Everyone is referencing the same, really 2 to 3 intersections that are the worst traffic wise. So the first is Mill Plain and the 205 / I always pronounce this wrong, Shocklove and the 205, Shocklove and Mill Plain. Those are consistently the worst. And I think that with East Vancouver growing, with Camas growing, new construction moving more east and more north, the construction that is going on in the city, you are going to see it get worse because there are also a lot of developments coming in. So this isn't widely known, but most of our auto mall in Vancouver is along 4th Plain and Andreessen, kind of just south of the mall, south of SR 500. You'll see that's where a lot of the car dealerships are, but there are incoming car dealerships along Mill Plain. So I think that that is going to increase traffic because in some ways, for instance, one of the car dealerships that's opening is opening in a Safeway. So Safeway brings local traffic, people that live probably within a mile or two radius that are going to shop at. Now, a car dealership brings probably traffic in a 30 to 50 mile radius. So people that wouldn't normally be on those streets are going to be on those streets. Also, the In-N-Out, the first In-N-Out is opening in Ridgefield, Washington any day now. We're nearing the end of summer of 2025. And In-N-Out has plans to open a second location in Washington. This will kind of interesting that they're not opening a location in Seattle or Bellevue, but they're opening two in Clark County. So the first one is going to be in Ridgefield. The second one is going to be along Mill Plain in East Vancouver. So you can imagine the traffic that's going to bring. So I don't think that the traffic along Mill Plain in East Vancouver, specifically as you approach the 205, is going to get better anytime soon. The second worst traffic, in my opinion, it's worse than Mill Plain in the 205, is where SR 500 terminates into Northeast 117th Avenue, and that intersection of 4th Plain Boulevard there is, to me, one of the worst. Like, I will go out of my way to avoid it, even if it takes longer, because it's just such an annoyance to go through. So that one has consistently come up. And then another one that I will try to avoid, but my everyday travels don't take me over there, is also 4th Plain in Andreessen, which is actually near the Auto Mall there, the existing one. It's also a throughway for a lot of central Vancouver. It's over by the mall. There's just a lot of traffic that goes on there. The new Tesla dealership is over there. So a lot of traffic there. Good luck trying to turn out of one of those intersections, because it is bumper to bumper there in that intersection. Now, I say all of this with the context of someone who used to live in Los Angeles. So if you live in a big city where like traffic is notorious, Atlanta, LA, the Bay Area, if you live up in Seattle, you are going to laugh at our traffic congestion problems. Nonetheless, when you become acclimated to usual driving here and you're used to being able to get to everything that you need to do on a day-to-day basis in 5 to 15 minutes, it is annoying to be stuck in traffic, and traffic adds another 5 to 10 minutes. You really will feel it once you're acclimated to the usual traffic here. And then the other part of this is street planning, because with the way that Vancouver has developed, Vancouver is a very old city. And so you see these plots of land, like people used to own massive plots of land, and over time it's been subdivided and it's gotten smaller and smaller. And the way that it was developed I don't think that decades ago people ever knew that Vancouver was going to become what it's become and what it is becoming. And so you see a lot of streets where, like 99th Street, for instance, goes through Lakeshore, crosses I-5, goes across through the very lower part, kind of where the division is between Salmon Creek and Hazeldale. And then it stops and it picks up again in Orchards. And there's no through way to get through there. So to get through there, you kind of have to do, like if you had to get from one side of 99th Street to the other, you kind of have to, it's not a straight shot. And there's a lot of streets like that because some of that land is still privately owned. It wasn't eminent domained. They're not that big. So going back to East Vancouver, and this isn't to pick on East Vancouver because it is one of my favorite areas within the city limits. But if you look along, and I'm going to take you on a little map tour here. If you look along Mill Plain from 205, which is sort of the start of East Vancouver, going east all the way to the Camas border, you'll see all of the major shopping along there. So you've got Fred Meyer, Trader Joe's, the FedEx store, one of the Kaiser clinics is there. You've got Target, Home Depot, Lowe's, Costco's just north of there. When you're looking at the east-west thoroughfares, almost all of the major shopping is along Mill Plain. If you go one major street up to Northeast 18th Street, from 205 east, you have to get all the way to 162nd before you have any major shopping. And the shopping in that intersection, there's a Wilco Farm store, there's a Starbucks, an eye clinic, like a dentist office, a Wendy's, not major shopping. And as you continue along 18th, there's like Pacific Community Park and the dog park and this Harmony Sports Complex, that whole thing. And then 18th ends, it curves to the right. You start going south, and now you're on 192nd over by Costco. That's the only major shopping center, is that Wilco on 18th and 162nd. And the trend continues as you go north. So from 18th, you go to 28th, you go to 49th, same thing, not major shopping. So all of East Vancouver is either going north to Orchards, but even more so, the only Target in East Vancouver is at the corner of 164th and Mill Plain. So you either have to go over by the Auto Mall, or you have to go to the East Vancouver one if you're going to Target. If you're going to Walmart, you either have to go through the intersection that's at Mill Plain and 205, which we already covered, or you go over to 192nd. And the Walmart there is just north of Mill Plain. It's at Mill Plain and 192nd, essentially. So everything is just along that one major road. So street planning, I would say, is a downside. And that goes for both sides. It's not just East Vancouver. It's just so easy to highlight that issue of traffic congestion and the street planning in East Vancouver. Now we're on, I believe, number 4, which is going to be noise pollution. Vancouver is not a widely known city like we talked about, but it is an old city. We're close to celebrating 200 years of being incorporated. And people don't realize that this used to be a major West Coast fort. So that's why we have Fort Vancouver. And as things kind of developed, it was a major hub for trade and movement of goods. It still is. The Columbia River, transporting stuff by river is actually one of the most economical ways to transport. Also train, way more economical than having semis on the road. We recently took about 30 clients out to Bonneville Dam and learned that one cargo ship on the Columbia River can hold the same amount of capacity of over 500 semi trucks. So that river transport is actually taking a lot of the congestion away, which kind of solves part of the issue that we have from the last one. I didn't know that was going to connect until I just said it. But so there is some noise pollution because we've got PDX Airport. One of the benefits of living in Vancouver is anywhere in the city, you're going to be about 15 minutes or less to PDX International Airport. That also means that we are close to the noise that comes with the flight paths and planes and the airport. That being said, it's not straightforward. You cannot look at the map and say that the closer you are to PDX, the more airport noise you'll have, because we had more I can't talk right now. We had more airport noise in Salmon Creek than we did when we lived in Southeast Vancouver, which is totally counterintuitive. So it is something that you want to talk to your realtor about. Hopefully that's me. If you're looking to buy, sell, or invest in the Pacific Northwest, make sure to shoot us a text at 360-818-4438. We'd be happy to help you with all of your real estate needs. Now, so you do want to pay attention to the flight patterns and where it's going, and I can talk to you about neighborhoods that are going to be quieter. But Vancouver is also a great place if you're a pilot, if you work in the airline industry, if you need to be anywhere near the airport for work, it's a great commute. So you just want to make sure that you're minimizing it. And some people, the airplane noise doesn't bother them. I have some clients who have medical issues where they're very sensitive to noise, and we spent a lot of time drilling down on which communities were going to give them the amount of quiet that they needed. So airplane noise is one of them. The second is, a lot of people don't realize that there is a train that runs through Vancouver, and it is a major used rail system. There is an ordinance in the city of Vancouver that they cannot blow their horns. So there's not a lot of train horn noise. That sounds weird to say, but there is noise from the train tracks. And sometimes that comes with views. So if you want to be, let's say, along the river, there's gorgeous properties all along Old Evergreen Highway, one of my favorite parts of Vancouver. And you just want to know how to mitigate the sound and where it's going, because sometimes you can look at a property and it has a view and it'll be relatively quiet. You won't have a lot of train noise. And other times, I've shown a home to clients and they didn't realize that the train track was literally right below it. You could not see it from the photos because when you come up off the Columbia River, Vancouver gains a lot of elevation, which is what creates those great views. But you want to be mindful of train noise if that's something that's going to bother you. And then the last bit is highway noise. So I mentioned the two bridges. We've got the I-5 bridge and the 205 bridge. Those start out very separate in the south part of Vancouver, and as you move north into the unincorporated area of Salmon Creek, which is also, it's unincorporated Vancouver, those two highways merge. So you've got those two highways going through Vancouver north-south. You've also got two east-west highways or freeways. You've got SR 14, State Route 14, and you've got SR 500 that cut through the city from an east-west perspective. So you just want to know what impact all of those noises are going to have on you, because we've, like I said, experienced some areas where we had very little noise and others where it was a nuisance to us. And you kind of need to know yourself, because if a view is your number one priority and you like the sound of trains. I have a client who bought a condo and he loves planes, trains, automobiles, boats. So from his condo, he could see all of those. He could see the I-5 bridge. He could see all of the boats on the Columbia. He could see the train track and watch planes come in and out as he was, walking along nearby his condo complex. So I think you just need to know yourself when it comes to this downside. Conversely, if you are in an occupation that requires that you get a certain amount of sleep at a certain amount of time, like if you are a nurse that works night shift, like one of my clients, it's something that we're going to want to talk through, and you want to be working with someone who can understand and deliver what you need. Because the last thing I want for any of my clients is to buy a house and it not be the right fit, because it's not a pair of shoes that's easy to change out. So we want to make sure that we're taking the right time and getting you the right house in the most efficient manner that we can. Number 5 is cost of living, and cost of living has gone up most places. Obviously, inflation is in the news. Doesn't matter what the administration is or how you feel about politics. Some things just cost more and are going to continue to cost more, and housing is probably one of those things. So we've seen housing rise. When my husband and I arrived in Vancouver, the median home price in Vancouver was close to about $360,000. It's now closer to $550, depends on the month, $575. And I'll share current stats as of August 2025. But the takeaway here is that housing prices are up. Sales tax has continued to go up. Obviously, living on the Oregon-Washington border, Oregon doesn't charge you sales tax if you're shopping over the bridge. The sales tax in Clark County ranges depending on what city you're in, about 8.4 to 8.7. Utility costs have gone up slightly, and I want to say that with a very big asterisk or caveat, because if you are coming from places that have high utility costs and you hear that might freak you out. But I mean it so minimally. Our electric rate for years was it was in the low 8s, and now it's like 8.9 or something. I forget. It's the electric bills and costs here are so low that aside from being in this line of work where I talk to people about it, it's so insignificant. All of our utilities are less than some of my family in California than their electric bill. Their one bill, we pay all of our utilities for less than one of their bills. But it is rising. And so that's something, again, I'm trying to frame this video. If you are someone who is pulling out pieces of information, trying to source, if you're like me and you love information and learning about things and really digging into things, and you start seeing these things and you're worried, I want to talk about what the downsides are. Are rising costs an issue? Yes, if where you live is cheaper. But so I want to talk about the downsides, but I also want to put them in perspective of like how big of an issue they are. For instance, the other cost rising is less of an issue for my husband and I than the traffic. And so I just want to put everything in perspective, because I would hate for you to miss this opportunity of being here in a place that might be great for your family, that might allow you to get ahead, to travel more, to save for retirement, to give your kids a better education, because you're afraid of one small thing that in the grand scheme of things isn't going to impact your daily life and satisfaction and enjoyment living in Vancouver. Number 6 is sort of weather related, because for some people the gray skies can be an issue. We don't get that many inches of rain per year. It's about in the low 40s annually. So if you're coming from places like Florida, you probably get more inches of rain. If you're coming from places in the East Coast, other places in the Northwest, the Midwest, you probably get more inches of rain per year. We just get ours spread out. But we will get anywhere from 7 to 8 months of gray weather. It's not the Eeyore kind of gray weather where you have this dark cloud hovering over you. It is I like to frame it like this. It's the way that it makes the most sense to me, which is that the gray skies are high up, so the clouds feel far away. And it's also a light gray, so there's some level of natural light. Like during the day, I can work all throughout the year with my windows open without needing to turn the overhead lights on. You'll get enough natural light even, throughout the year. So if you are concerned about the gray aspect of the weather, I would recommend planning your warm tropical vacation for like January, February. That's about the time of the year where you're like, okay, it's been a while, we've gone through the winter solstice, so you're done with the darkest parts of the year, but your body starts kind of itching for that warmth. So I would plan for that. Stay up on your vitamin D, maybe get a happy lamp. I bought a happy lamp 2 years ago to do a trial run, like a video for you guys about if I noticed a difference using it. And I'm still don't get sad seasonal affective disorder to the point where I've even taken it out of the box. I bought it for 2 years ago on Amazon. So maybe some of you guys can remind me in the comments if you want that video. I will make it a point to do it this year, and I will put the happy lamp on my desk and use it every day and report back. So that's one aspect. But if you are like my husband and you love gray and you love rain and you can't get enough snow, the warm weather and the increasing warm days, so increasing in temperature and frequency, we are getting more and more warmer days. Yesterday was a 97-degree day. Thankfully, we were taking my mother-in-law out to the coast, so we weren't here for it, so I didn't have to listen to my husband complain about the heat. But today is 80 degrees and beautiful. So I would say for the most part, we have a very manageable, easy to live with summer. But if that's something you're sensitive to, we are getting more hot days and more frequently. Very rarely do we have any days that are above the high 90s. And even when it does get to the high 90s, it might be like a day or two here, and then we kind of stabilize back into the 80s range. 80 to 89, I would say, is what we have on most summer days. And if you're coming from places like where I grew up, you're like, that's such a joke. We had some clients who were in Texas. They had 30 plus days of 100-degree heat, and it's humid, so the heat feels hotter there too. And that brings us to our last point, which is limited amenities. Now, if you visited the area, you may have gotten an email from me. If you reached out, please reach out before you come here. I love to meet you guys in person. If you take the time and expense to travel up here and you're thinking about working together, even if you come in the fall and you're like, we're not moving until the spring, please reach out. If we're in town, if our availability allows it, that's one of the best things we can do. You took the time and effort to come up here. The least we could do is meet with you if we're going to be working together. So we do make it a priority to do our best to meet with people when they're here. So please let us know if you're planning a trip. If we can't get together, or even if we can, I usually will send people right before their trip. We have an email with resources for your trip. It has our driving tour in it. It has some recommended restaurants. It has things to do, lists of mine and Jared's favorite restaurants, in different parts of town. And so if you've gotten that, you may see that most of the restaurants, actually I think all the restaurants we recommend on there are locally owned. There are some great options in there. That being said, we do not have the same access to boutique shopping, to high-end shopping, to maybe as many cool and innovative restaurants in Portland. And maybe we're a little bit spoiled because Portland is such a good foodie town that by comparison, Vancouver sometimes doesn't stack up in terms of options, or you end up going to the same places you like all the time. But so I would say limited amenities. It doesn't mean, this is a good question, Jared. I've never thought about this. If Portland didn't exist, if Vancouver was standalone with the amenities we have, with the shopping, the specialty grocery stores we have, any of the high-end stores, could you make it work if you didn't have access to Portland shopping?
You want the truth?
Yeah, I want the truth.
No,
you couldn't make it work.
To me, what makes Vancouver special...
Wait, let me...
What makes Vancouver unique and the value that it is because you get the best of both worlds. When we say that, we've been saying that for almost 5 years now. So you get access to all of these amazing amenities and world-class food, world-class biking, events... but then you can hop over the river in a matter of 15-20 minutes and it's a lot quieter and calmer. But no, me personally, I adore Vancouver and Greater Vancouver because of the access that it has to the things that Portland has, which are indisputable.
Now, Jarrett grew up in a big city in Philadelphia. I grew up in the suburbs, so to get to the big city was always an hour away, and Seattle's 2.5 to 3 hours away. I think I could deal with it because anything that I wanted, and we know plenty of people who refuse to go to Portland unless they have to, like to go to the airport. I think I could deal with it. I don't need a lot of specialty grocery. The stuff that's here between New Seasons, Natural Grocers, Fred Meyer, Trader Joe's, Costco, and some of like Chuck's Produce is a gem for Vancouver. I think I'd be fine. I don't do a lot of luxury shopping. High-end dining, like fine. First of all, Portland's not a fine dining city. It is a city where chefs are very innovative. It's a city where chefs are very innovative, and there's really cool concepts and like really great food, like farm to table stuff, but in a very casual environment. But I think I'd be okay with just Vancouver. Like if the biggest city was an hour away, I think I'd be okay with it. But nonetheless, limited amenities, including medical options. So sometimes residents have to drive to Portland if you need advanced care, because OHSU is the best hospital in the region that's in downtown Portland. You know, you may need to access the big city, Portland, Oregon, for some of those other things. So Vancouver's definitely improving with newer developments, but it's still kind of catching up. It's been a nice place to live, and it still is a nice place to live, and I think it's only going to get better. And then my final point when it comes to limited amenities is that we are getting more options, but a lot of locals, and I would probably be in this camp too, complain that some of the new stuff we get are still chains. So for instance, recently the Habit opened, Raising Cane's opened. There's this new place called the Chick Shop or something like that. They're still chains. They're not locally owned mom and pop stores that you'll only find in Vancouver. So a lot of the new stuff that's opening isn't exclusively local. And I would say that is definitely a complaint you'll see. And I would be in that camp. I would love to see more mom and pop stuff you could only get in Vancouver, because, you know, I think that's what makes aspects of a town feel rich. You definitely see that in downtown Vancouver, downtown Camas, downtown Ridgefield, somewhat Battleground. But I would just like to see more of it. I personally can't get enough of like the mom and pop small local stuff, and I love to support it. And the last point, I wouldn't say this is a downside. It's just, I would say, an uncertainty, which is the I-5 bridge replacement. That project is huge. One of the biggest projects in the county, actually in the region, in decades. And I think it's going to bring good and bad to Vancouver. There are a lot of concerns. You know, my husband and I do some cycling, and there are some concerns and rumors that the bridge could be, 100 feet above the river, and that can present accessibility challenges to people who want to utilize the bridge for multimodal transportation. So whether you want to walk or bike, if the bridge is so steep that it becomes difficult for people to use that are not in a car, that can present challenges. I don't know what the solution is. I have my solution, but I don't think the government cares what I think. But right now, you can walk across the bridge or bike across it with relative ease. It's a little steep, but it's not doable. Like, most people could walk across the bridge very easily. And we've personally done it multiple times. No problem. Wouldn't even think twice about it the way the bridge is right now. The other thing that the I-5 bridge replacement project brings is, in terms of uncertainty, is tolls. They are saying that they're going to toll not only the I-5 bridge, but also the 205 bridge. So if you are a commuter going into Oregon, that could be something that could become cost prohibitive. Or like just a week and a half ago when my mother-in-law flew into town, we went into Portland on the I-5 bridge, came back on the 205 bridge, and then went back to pick her up. So we crossed those bridges 4 times that day. If we had to pay a toll, we might rethink the way that we do it, depending on how much the toll is. So it's an uncertainty. Could become a downside, being completely transparent, but I don't think we know enough yet to know if it will or will not. So those are the downsides that we see when it comes to living in Vancouver. I'd love to hear if you live here, or if you visited, or if you've moved away from here. What are the downsides for you? I'm sure there will be comments saying that it's becoming too politically one way or the other. Vancouver still, on paper, when you look at the data, is a purple city. So I don't know, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. That's what we've come up with. Let us know if you want to deep dive into any of these topics. If you want to see something we haven't covered, let us know. We love chatting with you guys here in the comments. We love hearing from you. We get your texts and emails and calls, and obviously many of you have become clients of ours, and we look forward to helping more families. So if you know someone who could benefit from this information, please feel free to share this video. We really appreciate you being here. I think that's all I got for you today. Ciao.